The statement, if you fall under their influence, you will be led to the path of evil, does not indicate merely the three evil paths, but also tranquility and rapture, and in general, all of the 9 worlds. Therefore, all of the sutras except the Lotus Sutra, including those of Kegon, Egon, Hodo and Hanya, as well as the Nirvana and Daiichi Sutras, will lead people toward paths of evil. Also, with the exception of the Tendai sect, the adherents of the 7 other major Buddhist sects are in reality agents of hell who drive others toward evil paths. Even in the Tendai sect, there are those who profess faith in the Lotus Sutra, yet actually lead others toward the pre-Lotus Sutra teachings. They too are agents of hell who cause people to fall into the evil paths.
Thank you very much. So, although the last 2, Hosho and Tenjima, are the most difficult to overcome, we've already, I think it's coming clear that the Sanchoshima we most easily encounter is Bonno-sho and Bonno-ma, working on our desires and creating illusions. And you're already, I think, clear that Bonno-sho, those are obstacles outside us, which we nevertheless create, whilst Bonno-ma is working within us. In an earlier passage in this same Gosho, if anyone's got their books, it's page 135, Nichiren Daishonin explained the workings of this force in a little more detail, and very dramatically and graphically. He said this world is the province of the devil of the 6th heaven. All of its people have been related to him since time without beginning. He has not only built the prison of 25 realms within the 6 paths and confined all mankind, but also made wives and children into shackles, and parents and sovereigns into nets that block off the skies. To confound the Buddha nature, which is the people's true mind, he causes them to drink the wine of greed, anger, and stupidity, and feeds them nothing but poisoned dishes that leave them prostrate on the ground of the 3 evil paths. When he happens on one with a seeking mind, he acts to obstruct him. This was his description of how these forces work against us. So people, he says, are drunk by the 3 poisons. What does he mean by drunk? They're drunk, in other words, with their illusions, with desires that in fact can never ever bring them ultimately to true happiness. The wine of the 3 poisons. We can be greedy for it because of our desires and because of our illusions. We want these desires and we want to experience the rapture that they bring. And always in the end, as I explained earlier, we end up in hell. Always they prove to be an illusion at the final count. The poison dishes he talks about, this is the poison of anger. Anger, our desire to be superior, which leads to arrogance. People get power drunk, don't they, in the worst possible form. In the end, of course, they get into a state of rapture, and because of that, fall into their own self-made traps and plummet down into hell. And finally, you can get drunk on the wine of stupidity. The illusions, the illusion that fame and fortune, for example, are of vital importance. Ambition, greed, in the end, bring nothing in the way of happiness. This is the truth of it. So the most important thing for the devilish force to do is to make one drunk. Then we're at their mercy, at the mercy of the devil, if you like. And we become totally chained by our desires. So he said then, we can be chained or shackled by our wives and children. Please, ladies, remember this Gosho was written to 2 brothers. If he'd been writing to two sisters, he would have said husbands and children. So, of course, as I explained when we were going through this table, people closest to you feel the effects most strongly of the lower worlds in our own lives. Therefore, they react most quickly and immediately. Trapped by parents, we've seen that in this particular dosha. The whole reason it was written. The father of the Hidami brothers was trying to trap them and destroy their faith, probably hardly realizing really in his fury what he was doing. He was drunk through illusions. So this is really the work of Ma. How can we escape? Well, we've already talked about regular practice. It's very difficult to escape from Bono Ma unless you practice. So far as Bono Sho is concerned, the obstacles, we may think we can escape because in that case the aspect of time gets to work. So obviously before we marry, we're not likely to encounter the obstacle of a wife and the devilish force working through them and of children. Or even if we are married, people think that they can escape through divorce. Also, of course, before we're born, we don't get any desires anyway and don't have to worry about it. Likewise, people think that they can escape from hosho, the obstacle of people superior to us in status, by changing their job. If a boss, for example, is really attacking. So from that point of view, for a little while, people can escape. But in the end, of course, it always catches up with them. But Bono Ma, which is inside us, we really can't escape from at all. There's no way of running away from it. We only carry it with us wherever we go. So therefore, it comes back to that point of using the sword of regular practice. This is the only true way a human being can follow a life not being dictated to by the negative and destructive force. The problem is how to transform that destructive force into something valuable, isn't it? If we could do that with the whole world, we'd have no problems. How to transform it into something of value. So this is what Buddhism and the concept of Kosen-rufu too is all about. The whole world, in other words, is drinking the three poisons. The whole problem of peace, therefore, world peace, is how to transform those three poisons into something valuable and happy. In other words, transforming inherent ignorance or darkness into inherent enlightenment, isn't it? So, for example, disarmament is only a surface problem. We can very easily get all caught up in arguments about disarmament and go on all night about it. But in fact, it's only a surface problem. Deep down, the problem lies. How to rid people of the three poisons which create armaments, which create the problem of disarmament. This is where it's got to begin. If you disarm and you haven't removed the three poisons from people's lives, then in no time at all people will be arming again. So the purpose of our movement is not to work out how to disarm. It's to go to the root of the problem in more and more and more people's lives and transform that devilish influence into something valuable. So this, of course, is the whole point of the Risho Ankokuron, isn't it? The Risho Ankokuron, which we've been lecturing on for so long now, is concerning establish the ultimate truth, establishing the Gohonzon, so that you can get to the root of these problems and remove the poisons that are causing all the trouble. This is our task, and we need to be very careful not to get caught up in these surface matters. Of course, we need to know about them. We need to be able to discuss them. But in the end, the purpose of it all is to get to the root of it and cut that completely in order to eradicate the three poisons from this world. So in his guidance at Nagasaki, Sensei said, "At the moment we are deeply concerned about the Falklands dispute and the wars in the Middle East. Just as is stated in the Jiyu, the third chapter of the Lotus Sutra, the threefold mundane world is without peace, like a burning house. The lives of the people are filled with sufferings, and they are often frightened." That's a quote from the Lotus Sutra. Then Sensei went on, "There are many children of the Buddha in Britain and Argentina, and there are also members in Iran and Iraq. From this point of view, we might think that war should already be abolished, or should never be allowed to happen. Of course, it is natural for us as Buddhists to pray to the Daigonzen for peace. However, we are not politicians, and there is no other way for us but to strengthen the United Nations so that it can function according to its ideals, even if this is inevitably a gradual process. I would like you to understand that the movement by ordinary people to support the United Nations is one step forward towards world peace." So, in other words, our task, we can't change the karma of the world overnight. We've got to work at it and dig at it, like we were saying yesterday. In the same way we have to work and dig at our own karma. At the same time, we must understand that we have to go to the root of the problem and eliminate the three poisons. This is the only way the world can be changed in the end. But at the same time, so far as action is concerned, the very best thing we can do is to support the United Nations, which is the only nucleus in this world of the possibility of reason and goodness on a world scale in accordance with its charter. So this will take time. So our task is daimoku and action, isn't it? And gradually to eliminate the poison at the roots of everything. The point of our World Peace Expo is the same. We've got to raise the flag of Kosen Rufu, not only in our own hearts, but in a lot of other people's hearts as well, through Shakabuku. Nichiren Daishonin also mentions here the seeking mind, the importance of a seeking mind. So important that if you have a seeking mind, the devilish force will really have a go at you. Yet, it's the person with a seeking mind who will not become too drunk with the three poisons. A person with a seeking mind keeps perception lively in their minds. Therefore, it's the person who's most difficult to give in to any attack from the negative force. Dr. Yamazaki was saying that when René Huyghe, who was the French member of the French Academy who wrote the dialogue with Sensei, which is published in French, René Huyghe said, as long as a person has a seeking mind, he can teach others something of value. A dead mind can never do this. And Sensei said in reply, I totally agree. The cup of pure water I received from Mr. Toda was full to the brim, overflowing. I have been able to pass this on easily to others. Every time I practice, the cup overflows. And it's very interesting, I think, that all the people who have established a valuable relationship with Sensei, who are non-members, people who are holding dialogues with him and preparing books with him and so on, really are people with seeking minds. People who are really sincere, serious about life, not working towards their own selfish ends, but really trying to create a better world. People like Peche and Toynbee, and Brian Wilson from Oxford and so on. And such people, of course, can always give to others. So let's have a pause now for 5 minutes, and then we'll continue. Please, if you want to go out for a moment or so, get some fresh air, do so by all means. Before we leave the devil and his works behind, I want to make it clear that, of course, the devilish force of life can work in all the 9 worlds except for Buddhahood. It isn't only in hell, hunger, anger, and animality that the devil is at work. So that destructive force can be just as easily at work in the world of tranquility. Tranquility is very nice and very good for one, for a little while. But it's also a stagnant world, isn't it, where we create nothing of value for anybody or anything. So, of course, to stay in tranquility too long becomes then a destructive force for life. Likewise, in rapture. Rapture's a fantastic world to be in when your desires have been satisfied. But if we stay in it too long, we're most easily trapped by illusions. Really, rapture is the world of an old poem called Johnny Hedingham. The state of rapture is heady. You become blind. You don't look where you're going, and you make stupid mistakes and fall into a trap. Even in learning and realization or partial enlightenment or absorption, whatever you like to call that world, again, the destructive force can be extremely strong. People who are absorbed in their own particular studies or learning can become very callous about everything else in their environment. They can become absorbed with themselves and what they're achieving, their ideas, their partial enlightenment, and totally forget their wives and families. Or through that behavior, they find themselves ostracized by everybody around them and die lonely people. So all these worlds, even the world of Bodhisattva, which one might think was all good, can also be all bad. So in the world of Bodhisattva, the destructive force working through often Dhamma can cause people to feel that they are superior to those who they're helping. I am sacrificing myself for their sake. Even when you say it, you look down, don't you? I'm on a pedestal, holier than thou, spending my whole life amongst the poor. So likewise, of course, in that world of Bodhisattva, it can cause people to hate and resent you. And this shakes the courage of a person and undermines their determination. So really, in every world except the world of Buddha, this force can be at work. And it's the world of Buddhahood, of course, that transforms it into something valuable. So that last world, in the world of Bodhisattva, is very dangerous for leaders. Because very easily they could get trapped into that feeling of self-sacrifice. But that's only when the leader's practice is getting low. When one's life force is high, really overflowing, never will you complain. Always you'll feel joy out of what you're doing. Therefore, always you're on an equal level with everybody. But if the practice drops, then the complaining begins. My members never do what I ask them. I asked so-and-so and he hasn't done it, etc., etc., etc. So this is a terrific danger. And again, the only way to overcome it and ensure you're not trapped is by strong, regular practice. The only way. And finally, I've just been asked a question. Is it really right then, in that case, to chant for your desires? And that's a good question, because this is the very basis of Buddhism, isn't it? That you can chant for your desires, and you should chant for your desires. Some of those desires are for your happiness, yet some of them may not be. And the greatness of Buddhism is that you don't deny your desires, even though they can be the source of so much destruction and negativity. The reason for that is that chanting Nam-myoho Renge Kyo, you are in the Buddha state. You can't chant Nam-myoho Renge Kyo without being the Buddha state. Therefore, the best way, where desires are concerned, is to chant for them. And then, because through your chanting you activate wisdom, and wisdom gives you perception, you will really then discover whether those desires are truly for your happiness or not. And if they're not, of course the desire will then quite naturally disappear. So this is why Nichiren Daishonin said, you chant courageously with a single mind. Then the gonzan will act like a compass. In that way. So this is an incredible thing, really never known, as far as I know, in any other religion. That you do not deny your desires, you actually chant for them. Because the power of Nam-myoho Renge Kyo is so great that it can only work for value and happiness in the way I've just described. So Buddhism does not involve suppression. It does not involve separating one's life and ridding oneself of one's desires. Desires are an essential driving force of life. Some of them are for happiness, some of them for unhappiness. If you chant Nam-myoho Renge Kyo, you'll have the perception in the end to see what's worth chanting for and what isn't. I hope that's really clear to everybody. Right, let's leave the devil and go on to the last part of the Gosho.
Now you two brothers are like the hermit and his disciple. If either of you gives up halfway, you will both fail to attain Buddhahood. You are like the two wings of a bird or the two eyes of a man, and your wives are your support. Women support others and thereby cause others to support them. When a husband is happy, his wife will be fulfilled. If a husband is a thief, his wife will become one too. This is not a matter of this life alone. A man and wife are as close as a body and shadow, flowers and fruit, or roots and leaves in every existence of life. Insects eat the trees they live in, and fish drink the water in which they swim. If grass withers, orchids grieve. If pine trees flourish, oaks rejoice. Even trees and grass are so closely related. The hiyoko is a bird with one body and two heads. Both of its mouths nourish the same body. Hiboku are fish with only one eye each, so the male and the female remain together for life. A husband and wife should be like them.
It's such a beautiful passage, and as you can see, it concerns the incredibly close links between all living things, and in particular, of course, he talks about wives and husbands. And since there is that closeness in the very nature of life, the importance, therefore, of unity, harmony, or itai doshin. So he's exhorting the brothers and their wives there to get together, and through that to help each other and reinforce each other in overcoming the devilish force of life which is working so strongly against them. Though the only way to achieve real harmony, to achieve true itai doshin, is of course again through practice to the gonzan. even within our own organisation, even within NSUK, how often have we worried about disunity in our family, or disunity in our group, or disunity in our district, and we've sat and thought and thought and thought, what am I to do about this and that person, and so on and so forth. And probably the last thing we really think about is getting the whole district or the whole group to really chant Daimoku as much as possible over a period, which will, of course, in the end, achieve that unity, which no amount of thinking could achieve. So we too often rack our brains or try to use tactics in order to achieve unity, whereas in the end you can only achieve real, true unity, which will last and be constant through regular practice again. So this is why in the end districts or groups who have disunity in it must in the end come back to the Gohonzon, and through Daimoku, Tosos together, whatever it may be, that unity will always return. So of course the very fact that we forget Daimoku for so long often is Sanchashima in itself, isn't it? And then he goes on to explain about the relationship between a husband and a wife, very beautifully and movingly, and the closeness of that relationship, and how inevitably through Eshofuni, the inseparability of man and his environment, one reacts to the other so strongly. Whatever state of life the husband is in affects the wife, and vice versa. And he gives two examples of the hioku bird and the hiboku to show what this relationship in its closeness is really like. The himoku bird has two heads and one body. So he is pointing out that a marriage consists of two people. Those are the two heads. Yet they share the same environment, don't they? The same life to a very great extent. So what one mouth swallows will affect the other one. What one pair of eyes sees and absorbs affects the other. And so on. In other words, it's saying that for a marriage to be successful, you have to deeply respect each other, the existence of each other's lives. Then before you absorb anything through your eyes or your ears, before you eat anything, you will have thought, is that going to cause indigestion in the main body? This is true respect, isn't it, between a couple? So this is particularly difficult often because in a couple, a wife and a husband, I don't think this applies so much within NSUK or within Nichiren Shoshu Buddhism, but outside, because the wife or the husband will not recognize that beyond the shared part of their lives, there is a part of each one's life which is individual. A husband and wife cannot be the same. They're two different people with two different karmas. And furthermore, with two different roles in life. Though they may share one role in the creation of children and bringing them up or whatever, but beyond that, they have their own individual purpose in life. So in the past, often it's been very difficult for husbands to appreciate that their wives have an individual purpose, which is beyond the home and the family and the children. And also there are wives who will not acknowledge the husband's individual purpose and tend to always want to keep them within that circle. So this dosha is really all about that. We have to recognize those individual roles. We also need to recognize the individual nature of a woman and a man. The man must understand the individual nature of the woman. The woman must understand the individual nature of the man, because it is from that nature and character, isn't it, that their true purpose in life is manifested. So this is an incredibly important point. And of course, it's extremely difficult to do this and to overcome emotion unless you are basing your lives on the rock of a solid philosophy and practice. So this is where the Gahonzon, again, reveals its greatness. You can have, in other words, not only the relationship, the horizontal one, between a wife and a husband, which can be very emotional, and which can create incredible illusions, in each other's minds, which can lead to all sorts of disasters and troubles. But if, as well as that, there is another relationship going this way, with something that is absolute and constant, in other words, the Gahonzon. And if the relationship between the husband and wife is always that way, then those problems can be overcome, because the wisdom of the Gahonzon will do battle with those emotions and enable them to see real sense. So this is such an important point, that vertical relationship, and to be able to go through it. And what it means, in practical terms, is that if a husband and wife have a row, the most important thing is that one or other of them goes to the Gahonzon. If possible, both, but at least one, and then wisdom will be brought to bear and balance back into their lives. Yes, Bobby?
Is it the actual trust?
Respect
And trust in the Gahonzon that is the thing required. Like, you trust the Gahonzon, and when two people are individually pursuing their own lives,
Yes.
although they work in union, I think the trust is the really important thing there.
Well, it's respect for each other's roles, and an allowance, isn't it, on each one's part, to enable them to follow that role, as well as, of course, the united role, which is the home and the family, isn't it? So the Gahonzon, through regular practice to the Gahonzon, of course, it will prevent selfish emotions from blinding one to the existence of those two separate roles, as well as the united one, and therefore will increase through the Gahonzon that respect, isn't it? So it involves both. It's respect between the husband and the wife, but of course that respect is kept constant and active through the power of the Gahonzon. So that's the vertical relationship to the Gahonzon is very important, as well as the horizontal one. But if the vertical relationship with the Gahonzon is always there, if one or other always goes back to it, in the end every problem will be sorted, and the marriage will continue, and last for a whole lifetime. Okay, does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. So, of course, it's often difficult to hold on to the Gahonzon, isn't it? This is the problem. If we're really under the influence of that destructive force of life, we feel there's like a gap between us and the Gahonzon. Even though we may know theoretically the Gahonzon is Nichiren Daishonin, Nichiren Daishonin can't come to life and shake his finger and say, you're being so stupid, why didn't you do that? So that, of course, is where the organisation helps, isn't it? Through being able to get guidance. And above all, of course, there is Sensei who is relating all the Gosho and all that the Gosho says all the time into contemporary words that we can understand. And if we really try to live that guidance, and follow through what he's saying, we can find such incredible help in our own lives. So certainly, in my own case, I've learned totally that everything Sensei says and writes, I can put to the test and prove its value in my life. In this respect, though Nichiren Daishonin and the Gonzen have taught me everything, it's through the instrument of Sensei that this has happened, isn't it? In other words, through the organization we call the Soka Gakkai, or Nichiren Shoshu Soka Gakkai. So we need to establish that relationship with people who are senior in faith and who can really help us in these daily problems. Right, Ricky, last bit.
You two wives should have no regrets, even if you are harmed by your husbands, because of your faith in this teaching. If both of you unite in encouraging their faith, you will follow the path of the Dragon King's daughter and become the model for women attaining enlightenment in the evil latter day of the Lord. Insofar as you can act this way, no matter what may happen, I, Nichiren, will tell the two saints, the two heavenly gods and the 10 goddesses, as well as Shakyamuni and Tapo Buddhas, to make you Buddhas in every future existence. The Roku Harumitsa Sutra states that one should become the master of his mind rather than let his mind master him.
Well, earlier it said women support others and thereby cause others to support them. And in this particular paragraph, Nichiren Daishonin says to these two wives, you should have no regrets. You please continue to practice, even if through doing that your husbands have given up and attack you for it. Whatever happens, even if the men gave in, if the women continue to practice, they can save the day. So of course that can be vice versa. That was the situation in this particular case. So Buddhism, as you understand, teaches perfect equality between man and woman, each having their own vital function to play in life itself. And we have to support each other in understanding this, whether as a husband and wife or as the men and women's leader of a district or a group or whatever. And this is how, of course, we can do great human revolution if it happens to be necessary. So through this too, through this encouragement of man and woman for each other, each can then begin to discover their true role, their true purpose, and their true value in life. So obviously, woman's role is not to be like a man. This is not the true role of a woman. Though in the extreme side of the feminist movement, there is a tendency for some of them to think that's what they ought to be doing. But this is not so. In thinking that they have to be like a man, they're in fact swamping in their own lives their true qualities and role as a woman. A woman isn't a man, and a man isn't a woman, however hard you try. But each have an incredible, essential purpose for life. And the blend of the two can be one of the most creative possible units in society. So Gita was saying the other day that when René Huig lectured on this subject, he was referring to what Jung originally taught. But that definitely in the male there is a tendency towards reason and analysis and rationalization and often an ability to plan step by step in a very rational way far into the future. This is a general tendency in many men, not in every man, there are always exceptions, but a general tendency. But the general tendency, which is the greatness of a woman, is that they will always bring everything back to the basic values of life so often. To the very source of life, if you like, itself. Women give birth, don't they, to children. Their feeling for the very source of life and what are truly the basic values of life are instinctively very strong. So the combination of those two qualities in the man and the woman is unbelievably creative and valuable. The ability to rationalize, analyze, plan and think ahead, all the way down the line, which a man has. And that ability of a woman always to come back to the realistic, basic guts of life. To bring the men, if you like, down to earth. To the real, concrete values. So this is an incredible thing. And of course, by understanding that, both sides, a man and a woman can bring out their true greatness from each other. Then it makes a perfect whole. I believe, and certainly Sensei said it many times, and to an increasing degree, that the future of this world depends on that. This world cannot be directed by women, and it cannot be directed by men only, if it's going to overcome all the problems that lie ahead and achieve a peaceful and happy and prosperous state. The two are vital, each working to their fullest extent. This, of course, is the perfect quality of life, isn't it? And the sad thing is that when you have no Gohonzon, it's so easy to swing to one extreme or another. So, it's been quite a long lecture, and I thank you for paying attention so closely. I really hope that through this lecture, Sanchashima will become clearer. The realism of the negative and destructive force of life that's working in us. And of course, through becoming clearer, we can deal with it so much more easily. And likewise, that the greatest means of overcoming this force is through the unity of Itai Doshin. Whether that force is attacking you as a family, as a couple, as a child to the parents, or in a group, or a district, or a chapter, or in the whole of NSUK. The unity of Itai Doshin achieved through the Gohonzon is the only real means of continuing constantly, day in, day out, and sustaining this battle against this negative force, so that even in our lifetime, we can make a great step forward in establishing a happy world and lay the foundation. Great. Thank you very much indeed for listening. Thank you very much. Thank you.